First tonight, President Trump has said the ceasefire in Gaza is still in place, hours after health officials in the territory confirmed Israeli airstrikes had killed more than 40 people. Israel had accused Hamas of killing 2 Israeli soldiers near Rafah in southern Gaza. Hamas denied knowledge of the incident and accused Israel of fabricating pretexts to resume the war. Israel said it had begun a renewed enforcement of the ceasefire. Correspondents say Washington is trying to calm the situation, and Mr. Trump has suggested that the leadership of Hamas was not involved in the shooting, rather it was what he called rebels. They say it underscores the need to have the Arab stabilization in place in Gaza as soon as possible, the stabilization force, that is.
Well, we're going to have to see what's happening. We want to make sure that it's going to be very peaceful with Hamas. And as you know, they've been quite rambunctious. They've been doing some shooting, and we think maybe the leadership isn't involved in that. Some rebels within. But either way, it's going to be handled properly. It's going to be handled toughly, but properly.
Is the ceasefire still in place?
Yeah, it is. Yes.
President Trump. Meanwhile, a top U.S. official who negotiated the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas says he believes the Palestinian group is acting in good faith as it searches for the remains of the 16 Israeli hostages it's yet to hand over. Mr. Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, told American media that from what the U.S. had observed, Hamas was looking to honor the agreement. Mr. Kushner also said Israel must improve life for the Palestinians so they can thrive and do better. Well, let's get a Nigerian assessment now of what is happening in Gaza as the ceasefire continues to wobble and different fractions try to gain influence. And for this, I'm joined now in the studio by the international political analyst and former Nigerian diplomat who served in many countries in Africa, Europe and the Americas, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Charles. Nice to be with you again.
So more than 40 people have been killed since the ceasefire. And one has to ask, what type of ceasefire is that? And what kind of peace is President Trump still insistently talking about in Gaza, although we understand that the truce has now been restored?
Well, let's be grateful that the truce has been restored. But this is what happens if you do not understand that for a situation like this, there's supposed to be a number of structures in place before you embark on a victory lap. But when you've gone on a victory lap and believe that everything is okay, of course, you run into the kind of challenges they are facing now. But the good thing is that it is still holding, and I guess the rest of the world wants to see hope that it will, continue to hold. But Charles, you remember I told you here a couple of times that we had this conversation in the past, that it is very difficult to destroy organizations like Hamas. And what is even more ironic or interesting, the same Israel that wants to destroy Hamas negotiated with Hamas. The same Israel is demanding for hostages from Hamas. The same Israel is giving condition for Hamas. So you begin to wonder what exactly was the essence of, the whole war, because Hamas has shown that it has not been destroyed and that it's still a force to be reckoned with.
And of course, Israel has been arming other groups in Gaza
Precisely.
to take on Hamas, and that has been adding another layer to that powder.
I was coming to that because some of Israelis operatives, from the Arab, that same Gaza, are also part of the people creating the situation. And when these things happen, and you see Israel going as far as killing 40 people in a space of, you begin to wonder exactly whether from the beginning this was not well planned. Because I said it again on this saying that maybe we have overrated Israel from the beginning. Because when things like this happened in the past, this is not the way Israel reacted.
They used to be much more surgical and precise.
They go in there, find the hostages and destroy, In fact, they did it after the Munich incident. They did it in Entebbe and other places. They killed everybody involved. But now they were just destroying properties. destroying tall buildings and killing people recklessly.
And talking about that, we heard one local doctor in Gaza talking about how he's lost 43 members of his extended family, and he said that that story applies to so many families in Gaza who have lost loved ones and lost their homes, property, all of that. So a collective horror story. I mean, how does one process loss on that scale?
It's going to be very difficult to process that kind of loss. What I worry about is that some of the people who witness these atrocities might at the end of the day join Hamas to want to fight again. And that is the danger of
the revenge factor.
The revenge factor. And that is the danger of not doing a proper homework, in terms of negotiating the peace, the peace agreement. The stabilization force or the international force that was expected to be on the ground should by now be on the ground. But unfortunately, it is not there, and there are no indications. There are no indications that they are ready or that they are ready to be in place. Except that force is in place, we might have these unnecessary skirmishes that creates the valuation of yesterday.
Yeah. So, I mean, clearly it's going to take the continued involvement of all the mediators to keep shoring up this deal. I mean, you mentioned that at the beginning, but also settle key issues now on the future of Gaza and, of course, Hamas.
Oh, no, for sure. Look, the peace agreement, if you want to look at it, it's to some extent a little bit very comprehensive. But the issue is, would they go that far to implement every line in that agreement? Because item 19, if I remember very clearly, said something about, not very clear, it wasn't well spelled out, but it said something about a two-state solution, even though it didn't probably use that word.
It hinted at a two-state solution. They hinted at that.
So if they go by the terms of the agreement and it is religiously implemented, we might probably find that in the next, maybe by this time next year, we'll be talking of that possibility of a two-state solution.
In that context, help us consider the wider political picture as it stands right now with regard to Gaza. U.S. representatives are in Israel to shore things up. Hamas negotiators are in Cairo. What is the next phase of this deal, and how likely is it for that to happen?
Look, the next stage of the deal is to put some boots on the ground. That in itself will reduce any conflicts inside Gaza and conflict between Hamas, other operators and Hamas and the Egyptians. I mean, and the Israelis.
But you see, that would also interrupt you. That necessarily has not been a deterrent, because if you look at Lebanon, there were United Nations troops in Lebanon, but it never stopped the Israelis.
True. But I guess that just exactly what President Trump is determined that if for nothing else, this one should work.
Right.
Because as it's turning out...
So it all depends on him, basically.
So it all depends on him. So as it's turning out, Ukraine doesn't look as if it's going to happen soon. So the only chance of getting,
getting the big gong, eh? The big Nobel gong.
You know where I was going to, is probably to ensure that this peace deal is achieved.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And there's a peace.
Yeah.
Look, I think the world should rally around to ensure that the stabilization force goes in place. And I'll say this: I would actually be happy if a country like Nigeria contributes troops to that.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be an Arab force.
No, it's not only an Arab force. It's supposed to be an international force.
They did say that the
Arab and Muslim, because this was why they invited Indonesia. This was why they invited Azerbaijan to the conference. In the first instance, we can offer, because Charles, for quite some time now, we've not been engaged in peacekeeping. And look, if we are campaigning as of today, that is the only factor, point we have.
We'll have to watch and see what happens there. But as we gallop ahead, who do you think should pay for the other big thing there, which is the reconstruction of Gaza? The Europeans contributed heavily to building up Gaza, but they now want guarantees that if they stomp up more cash, it won't get destroyed again.
Well, I think this time around the Arab states should do more. Look, over the past couple of years, the Gulf states and quite a number of the Arab states have become very rich. So they have the capacity, the financial the strength to contribute to, to rebuilding. And of course, I believe the Americans will also put in some money, and certainly the Europeans will do. So I think the world should rally around, and, but for me, my prayer is that we can move quickly to the two-state solution and get this thing resolved once and for all.
Okay, well, as you yourself look back at your professional career as a diplomat, does it look like the protections for civilians in wartime are getting less and worse, as we've seen in places like Gaza? And if so, is there an awful, tragic reality about that for you?
It's getting worse. And I don't even know how to explain it. If I think of, when you asked that question, my mind went back to Liberia and Sierra Leone. The level of brutality, the inhumanity with which that, the rebels on both sides executed the war, it's unbelievable. And the same thing has happened certainly in Gaza. It's difficult to believe that the people of God, the children of Abraham, will spend how many days just bombing and destroying and killing children, women, and everybody. And at the end of the day, their main target, Hamas, is well and alive and operating in Gaza today.
Yeah, it's a very depressing thought, but we appreciate your analysis as always. Ambassador Joe Keshi is an international political analyst, former Nigerian diplomat who served in many countries in Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks.